Chapter 5 Mysteries of the Earth. Earth's crust contains many wonders. While the theory of continental drift seems to explain some things that once seemed mysterious, it does not explain many other mysteries. Science textbook writers who speak so confidently about the age and features of our Earth often ignore the mysteries, just because they cannot be explained. Many features of Earth bear silent witness to a cataclysm or cataclysms that might have helped shape land surfaces, but which cannot be explained by gradual continental drift. About 80 years ago, Russians in northern Siberia found the remains of a frozen mammoth, a giant woolly elephant that lived long ago. What shocked the world was that the mammoth had been frozen so suddenly that it was still chewing its food. In that beast's mouth, part of its last meal was preserved. It had been eating delicate grasses and flowers called buttercups. Other mammoths were found too, their flesh so well preserved that steaks cut from them were cooked and served to the Russian scientists and to members of the Royal Society in London, England. How can we explain it? How did herds of fat, well-fed animals grazing on grasses and buttercups in warm fields suddenly freeze to death, so quickly that their last mouthful could not be swallowed, and so quickly that their fresh meat was preserved for thousands of years? In his 2004 book, Frozen in Time, meteorologist Mike Oward offered an explanation for how these animals froze so rapidly. He suggested that the post-flood waters were very warm from all the volcanic activity underneath the sea floor. These warmer ocean waters created temperate zones along the northern coasts of Siberia and Alaska. As the ocean waters cooled over the next few centuries, a sudden climate change, due to shifts in current directions, likely caused a rapid freezing of these coastal lands. He suggested that this rapid change in climate could have resulted in the literal freezing of many animals in their tracks. Whatever happened, it is clear that some terrible cataclysm, which affected not just the herds of animals, but also the surface of the earth, was involved. Mountains where they shouldn't be. The theory of plate tectonics holds that mountains are formed when the great plates on which the continents rest drift together and collide. The tremendous pressures crack Earth's crust, piling up the surface rock to make mountain ranges. This means that mountain ranges should be found along the edges of the continents, like the Andes Mountains in South America. But what about mountain ranges like our central and southern Rocky Mountains? From what geologists know now, our Rocky Mountains simply shouldn't be there, any more than quick frozen woolly mammoths should be found in Siberia. There are many other features of North America that also do not fit. The Colorado Plateau is a great block of sedimentary rock, hundreds of miles wide. That block of rock seems to have been lifted up, still lying flat rather than tilted or broken. How could that have happened? No one knows for sure. The Badlands in our Dakotas have been carefully studied, and geologists agree that their rock formations were formed by rushing waters. But these too are hundreds of miles wide. Where did the unbelievable masses of rushing water needed to deposit and later erode the Badlands come from? Along the west coast of the United States, geologists have located what is called suspect terrain. That phrase is used to describe masses of land that are close together today, but that geologists believe could not have originated together. San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge is 9,266 feet long. Yet geologists think that the land on one end must have been developed at least 1,000 miles away from the land at the other end. In the San Francisco area, geologists have found 10 different terrains, one of which contains fossils of animal life found only in the ocean near the equator. Some geologists have concluded that our whole continent is like a patchwork quilt, made with bits of land that they think first formed in Asia or Africa, or on various ocean floors. How could this have happened? How could all these bits and pieces have come together at the edges of our continent from all around the globe? Geologists have difficulty answering these questions, and yet they know that somehow it must have happened. How old is the Earth? One of the ways that scientists deal with mysteries is by appealing to time. They may not know just how something happened, but given billions of years, they feel that almost anything could have happened. So an important question is, how old is our Earth anyway? The date of creation and the fact of creation are two separate and distinct issues. The Bible tells us that God created the universe. The Bible teaches that God shaped the earth as a home for humankind and created the living plants and animals. The Bible does not tell us exactly when creation took place, but gives enough genealogical information to infer an age of less than 10,000 years. God's world contains much evidence for creation. Earth, the only planet we know of that can support life, is special. As we'll see, living creatures are so unique that there's really no chance at all that life could just happen. We'll also see why the many different and complex living creatures on Earth could hardly have developed from a single ancient cell as evolutionists think. All this is evidence that God exists and that He is our Creator, but none of this tells us the date of creation. Modern scientists who accept the theory of evolution think that Earth was formed billions of years ago. They think the animals whose fossil remains are found in Earth's rocks lived millions of years ago. And geologists have worked with other scientists to date different kinds of rocks and different fossils. For instance, these scientists say that the Eocene epoch, when they once thought the first horses appeared, began 56 million years ago. They say the Devonian period, where they think the first amphibians and many fish appeared, began 419 million years ago. Even though these scientists speak confidently about such dates, the record in the rocks is not as clear as they would like people to think. Just as scientists talk about the theory of evolution as though it were a fact instead of a theory, so do they give dates to different rocks and fossils when it is not at all certain those dates are right. How scientists use fossils to determine age. One record found in the rock is reasonably clear. Remains of plants and animals called fossils are there, and similar groups of animals usually, but not always, appear in similar strata or layers. In general, the mammals are found in higher layers of rock, dinosaurs in the middle layers, and water animals like trilobites in the lowest sedimentary layers. The theory of evolution says that over millions of years, larger and more complex animals developed from earlier, different kinds of animals. Evolutionists have decided that trilobite rock, the lower rock in which trilobite fossils are found, is therefore much older than rocks with other kinds of fossils. This trilobite rock is called Cambrian, and evolutionists think it is up to 540 million years old. Now, it's true that where trilobite rocks, or Cambrian, are found below rocks containing other fossils, the Cambrian rocks were obviously deposited first. But the sequence of deposit tells us nothing about an absolute age. For example, we know from history that George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were both presidents of the United States. If we knew only that Indians lived here first, and that Washington was president before Lincoln, we could only guess at when those things occurred. How do we know that Lincoln was president in the 1860s, Washington was president in the 1780s, and that Indians alone lived here before 1600? We know because we have a written history and a common dating system. We count time from the birth of Christ, and many written documents that give dates tell the story of Europeans coming to America and stories of Washington and Lincoln. When it comes to rocks, we have no written history. No one wrote down a calendar date when a particular layer of rock was deposited. We might know which rock strata came first, but that alone does not tell us when the rock layers were laid down. So ages given to various strata of rocks are at best an educated guess. What is radiometric dating? At first, ages were assigned to different rock strata by use of the theory of evolution itself. Evolutionists assume that more complicated forms of life develop from simpler forms. They also assumed that this took millions and millions of years. So different rock strata were often identified by the fossils they contained, and ages were simply assigned. Today, the method scientists use to help estimate the age of Earth and of rock strata is radiometric dating. Some kinds of radioactive materials decay or break down at a very slow rate. This means that a certain percent of different radioactive elements slowly turn into other elements. Carbon-14 turns into nitrogen-14. Uranium turns into thorium, a few other elements, and then into lead. Rubidium turns into strontium. Scientists have tried to calculate the age of fossils and rocks by measuring the amount of these elements in rocks. They then figure out how long it would take for the source material, carbon-14, uranium or rubidium, to decay into nitrogen-14, thorium or lead, or strontium. This figure gives scientists what they believe is the approximate age of the fossil or rock being dated. We can understand how radiometric dating works if we imagine a large hotel in which there are 1,000 people. You stand outside and notice that every day at noon, one adult woman comes out of the hotel and a young girl goes in to take her place. After you've watched this for 10 days and are sure that only one exchange a day is made, you figure out a way to tell how long the people have been in the hotel. You will go inside and count the women and young girls. Let's suppose you do go in and that you count 600 women and 400 young girls. How long will the people have been in the hotel? Why, exactly 400 days. How do you know? You weren't there when the woman went into the hotel, but you know that every day one young girl changes place with one woman. Since there are 400 young girls, then it took 400 days for the exchange, and the group went into the hotel 400 days ago. This is just how radiometric dating works. This original element is exchanged for a daughter element at a fixed rate. If you know how many exchanges have taken place, then you can tell when the process started. Because carbon-14 breaks down relatively quickly, it cannot be used to measure times over 100,000 years. But scientists have used uranium isotopes, which decay very slowly, to measure times they believe go back as far as 4.6 billion years. What's wrong with radiometric dating? In some cases, radiometric dating seems to work as those who believe in evolution predict. But in other cases, the methods give very different results than expected. Actually, there are many reasons why radiometric dating cannot be considered reliable. Think back to that hotel. We decided that the group entered the hotel 400 days ago. We reached this conclusion by counting the young girls, thinking that the exchange was one young girl for one woman per day. If there were 400 children, we reasoned the group entered the hotel 400 days ago. The problem is, to reach this conclusion, we had to make several assumptions. We had to suppose that certain things are true, which we do not know are true. First, we assumed that the 1,000 people who went into the hotel were all adult women. But what if when they went in, there were 800 women and 200 young girls? In that case, our figure of 400 days would be wrong. The group would have been in the hotel for only 200 days. Scientists assumed that originally all the material in a radiometric sample was carbon-14 or rubidium or whatever. What if originally only part was carbon-14 and part was already nitrogen-14? What if originally part of the material being measured was rubidium and part was already strontium? Since we do not know what there was originally, the dates may be very far from correct. Second, remember that we watched the hotel for just 10 days. We saw one exchange take place each day, so we assumed that rate of exchange had not changed since the group went into the hotel. But what if before we started watching, 4 young girls changed places with 4 women each day? Then again we would be wrong about when the group entered the hotel. This too is a problem for radiometric dating. Experiments have shown that carbon-14, for instance, does change into nitrogen-14 at different rates, depending on factors like heat and radiation. Also, we now know that high electric voltages definitely change the rate of decay of many elements. So while carbon dating seems relatively accurate up to its 100,000-year limit, there are serious reasons to doubt the evolutionist confidence that the Earth's rocks and fossils must be of a great age. Mysteries of the Earth that cast doubt on scientists present theories can't be explained away by the notion that given enough time, anything could have happened. From the beginning, one of the mysteries that casts doubt on evolutionists' picture of Earth's past is soil. People who believe the theory of evolution think of Earth's crust and of life itself as developing over billions of years. Yet the nature of Earth's soil suggests that it couldn't have happened that way. Perhaps the most important thing about Earth's crust is that much of it is covered with soil. Soil is the fine earth on land surfaces that contains plant and animal residue. Soil is made up in part of minerals washed out of rocks and of weathered rock itself that has been broken down into small grains. But alone such rock material is sterile. Plants can't grow in it. Animals can't live on it. It will not support life. To support life, soil must also contain organic matter. What is organic matter? It is the material that comes from or is made up of once living things. So soil must contain elements that come from plants and animals. In fact, soil also must contain vast numbers of living organisms, from single-celled bacteria to tiny animals. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that a square foot of rich soil may contain up to 1 billion organisms. These tiny living things help to break down the decaying bodies of plants and animals that have died. The chemicals in the dead organic matter will be used again to grow the plants and animals that replace the ones that died. Also, soil bacteria take nitrogen from rocks and air and release it in forms that can be used by plants. If we look at the surface of the earth and ask what is necessary for it to support life, we have to give this answer. We need soil made of weathered rock. We need the chemicals that water washes from the rocks. We need air and water, but soil also must contain organic matter, and soil must have millions of tiny living organisms in it, if anything is to grow. This poses a difficult problem for those who believe in the slow evolution of Earth's surface and living things. Where did the soil that living things need in order to exist come from before there were living things to fill the soil with organic matter? The only possible explanation is that Earth and life did not develop as scientists now think. When God created the world, he must have covered its continents with soil already filled with the living creatures that Earth must have in order to support life. What was Earth like when it was created? People have tried in different ways to calculate the age of the Earth. As we've seen, each approach has its problems. The Bible does not tell us how old Earth is, and evidence from Earth's surface is uncertain. But there's another question we should ask. What was Earth like when God created it? Was Earth just empty rock? Or was it much as it is today, a watery world filled with many different kinds of plants and animals? Certainly the nature of soil provides a strong indication that Earth was not too different than it is now. We might raise a similar question about Adam. What was Adam like when he was created? Was he created as a baby? Or was Adam created grown up, looking like an adult, perhaps about 30 years old? It's clear from the Bible that Adam was created as an adult. He may have seemed 30 years old the day after he was created. Some Christians argue that our earth was also created grown up. There were trees that looked as if they had grown for years. Light from distant stars was created too, traveling to earth just as if it had been on its way for billions of years. If God created our world much as it is today, how could anyone possibly tell how old it is? While some have said that such a creation would be deceptive, this isn't necessarily so. After all, God has provided much evidence of creation. Who can tell what mysteries might now be explained if evolutionists had not rejected God and scientists did not try to explain all things without him? Will the mysteries ever be solved? Human beings probably will always study our earth and try to learn about it. Astronomers will study the stars and galaxies in the heaven. More and more will be learned about our solar system and the sun. More will be learned about the seas. Some of the things that appear to be mysteries today might be explained in the future, but always new mysteries will be uncovered. Always, too, people will come up with new theories to try to explain what they learn. This is how science has always worked. As more and more is learned, old theories change and new theories are developed. What most scientists believe in one generation, like the belief of scientists in 1915 that Earth's continents have not moved, is often revised by the next generation. So it's foolish to believe something today just because most scientists say or most scientists believe it is true. We Christians can't be sure about our scientific theories either. Just because a Christian scientist thinks something is true does not prove it. All scientists work with hypotheses. No scientist can say his hypothesis is a fact. The Bible is not a science book and does not try to explain scientific details. What the Bible does do is tell us that the universe and life itself didn't just happen. It tells us that God made the universe. God created the heavens and filled the space with galaxies of stars. God shaped our earth, making it a home for living creatures. God created all living things, and most special of all, God created human beings for Him to love and for them to love Him. Is it foolish to believe in God when we can't solve all the mysteries that exist in our universe? Not at all. In fact, the more we learn about our universe and the more mysteries we uncover, the more we realize that it is foolish not to believe in God. Despite many things we can't explain, a study of our world convinces us that the universe, our planet, and life itself really could not just happen. In the beginning, there was God.